Fun fact, shame might get you sober, but it won't keep you sober in most cases. I had a buddy I asked recently if he felt shame. He's been trying hard to get sober. And I asked if he felt shame when he slipped. And he said, yeah, I usually beat myself up for a day or two, and then I can usually forgive myself. And I said, man, you gotta stop with that. I said, you've got a superpower. You know what it is? The ability to perpetually restart. You've been doing this for weeks now, and you've been getting better, and your slips have been, less, and you're trying your ass off. You're starting to do the work, you're going to meetings, you're reading books, you're doing it. You need to do more, and you need to really make that ultimate decision to completely take alcohol off the table, anything but booze, ABB. But you're getting there. And there's a study that found those who forgave themselves for failing at a task were more likely to brush themselves off and try again. And that, like so many things I read, I apply them all to the sobriety journey. And even someone might be listening to this that isn't struggling with that. If they're struggling with something else, listen up. Because the research suggests that self-forgiveness is linked to a greater willingness to try again after failure. And that it can lead to an increased self-confidence, resilience, a positive mindset, and in turn, it promotes perseverance and a renewed effort to overcome challenges. So look at all that a slip can do for you, as long as you don't beat yourself up for it. I hate to glorify slips, but, they are part of the process. Not for everybody, but for most. And the acronym stands for some learning in progress. And I do like to say, I've done all the research for you, so just watch all my videos. But in lieu of that, when it happens, they say failure, or I prefer to say unsuccess, is success in progress. It's not failure, it's feedback. And I love to say that for every day one you declare, it's either going to be your last or get you one closer to your last, as long as you keep showing up. Think about that. It's pretty much a guarantee as long as you keep showing up. As they say in AA, meeting makers make it. So if you just keep showing up, doing the work, and declaring your day one, ideally with pride. That's ultimately what I did. Yeah, maybe not the first time. And initially I wasn't even declaring. I wasn't being honest. I would only share in my good days and act like I had it all figured out. But then I started declaring and just saying, hey, it's day one. But I said it with pride in terms of, I'm going to do this, and fake it till you make it. Again, it takes what it takes. But I said, this is day one. I'm coming at this thing even harder this time, and I'd often make it through, and then ultimately would slip with my biggest trigger, my pizza shop. But then I'd say, F this, and I'm going to do this. And I'd get back on the horse and declare another day one. And then ultimately, it just so happened I didn't share my day one, but I shared on what ended up being my final day two. And I was never so proud to share it. And it was with the head of my whole community, who I have great success for. And I said, on that call, I didn't expect to do it, but once I did, I said, I did decide I was never going to share my day count with you, Laura, unless I was going to make it stick. And that ultimately inspired me to. So, and speaking of her, Laura McCowan, in her book, Push Off From Here, she said, I noticed the people who got sober and seemed healthy and at peace weren't in the business of endlessly beating themselves up. They were honest about their mistakes, but they didn't wear them as an identity. It goes right in line with what I just said. And she said, and most of all, they had a sense of humor. So if you can add that in as well, it can really help. There's one woman that got on and she said, I effed up, but I'm not shame spiraling. And another one said, talking about her slips, but she said, I've been training for sobriety for a long time, and there's nothing to feel shame for anyway. This is a chronic brain disease, just like Alzheimer's. And no Alzheimer's patient should feel shame for their forgetfulness. And it's the same thing with this. This is a compulsion. We have a compulsion to drink. We do not process alcohol the same as normal drinkers. So if you feel shame, you're part of the problem. I'm trying to educate the world, so help me out, that we process alcohol differently. And it's very difficult to overcome, and it cannot be done by shaming ourselves. We cannot shame ourselves into not drinking. It's the only thing helps is compassion. That's why tough love doesn't work. Self-compassion is key to the recovery process. So as I said to my buddy, By beating yourself up, you're only delaying the recovery process and the process of loving yourself. You should be commending yourself for all the attempts for so long. The only coping mechanism you had was drinking. You're now doing the work. You're learning new coping mechanisms. And eventually, just like that voice, you're not going to take no for an answer, but it's going to be in terms of not drinking. Addiction is not a lack of willpower. It's a physical and mental illness that should be met with the same compassion as every other illness. Shame is useless, but it's adjacent to I can do better. So take that anger, sadness, even shame if it must be, but channel that towards the real enemy, which is alcohol and this disorder. You can do it. I did it. You can do it. We can do it. And that'll do it. As always, please like, share, subscribe, and remember, stronger, sober. Thanks.